Hi, I'm Michael. I own multiple small businesses. I am self-entertained by my own improv shows, bit manic, way insecure, and extremely neurotic. I am a TV host and your host right now for what we call the Second Scene podcast. It's a Dweebs Global production where we interview people you know about the things that they're not necessarily known for. I'm here today with W.A. Fulkerson. He is an award-winning screenwriter, author, and storyteller. His latest book is For Whom the Sun Sings, but whose second scene is as a wrestling coach and Brazilian Jiu-jistu practitioner. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, sounded right to me. Thanks for having me on the show, Michael.
No problem, no problem. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Do I refer to you as W.A. or Wesley or?
Yeah, just Wes or Wesley is fine. Yeah. You know, when your name is Wesley Fulkerson, that doesn't fit on the front of, anything. So other methods have been devised.
Gotcha. I like that. I like that W.A. I like the way that looks.
In a fit of optimism and also trying to creatively solve the fitting on the cover problem, I started writing professionally about 8 years ago. So W.A. Fulkerson, because we thought that sounded really literary. And everybody and their brother does it these days. So just another one of those initial writer guys.
Yeah, it looks very official. It feels
cool.
Official.
All right.
It feels like it's supposed to be there. I'm going to start simple. So where are you from?
I'm from San Diego, and believe it or not, I'm actually a fifth generation San Diegan. My children are sixth, which is about as old San Diego is. That's on my dad's side and my mom's side. Wasn't that long ago. They came over from Greece. But so we've got pretty deep roots here in San Diego. Lived in LA for a few years, several years ago, and loving life down here, man.
Okay, I mean, no matter where anyone lives, being fifth or sixth generation is pretty unheard of.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Usually don't last 2. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. So is your family like known in the area? Is there any plaques anywhere with their names on it?
Sort of, actually, yeah. My grandfather on my mom's side was a pretty prominent judge. They had a day named after him down here for a while, which was sort of cool. He was real involved in a lot of boards and city stuff. And on my dad's side, a couple of generations ago, they were theater owners down in downtown San Diego, the Palmer family, and they did a bunch of neat stuff down there. So kind of yes, kind of no.
I got you. How do you lose the day? You had a day. What happened?
I think when they do a proclamation for this individual's day, I think most of the time it's just that 1 year. I don't think it's observed again and again unless you discover America or cure cancer or something.
Okay. It was the day because he was a well-known judge. It was
Yeah, it was to thank for his work in the judicial system and also his all his community efforts. Like I said, he sat on numerous boards throughout the course of his life, started a lot of community programs and things like that.
Got you. That'd probably be pretty interesting to go back and read through everything that he's done. It sounds like he's probably shaped the area. I'm sure the population wasn't so great.
Yeah, he's the one who taught me how to write. His name was Judge Earl Cantos. Really neat guy.
Okay, very cool. So you have a family now? You married? You have kids?
Yeah, 2 of them, one of each. My oldest is going to be 2.5 next month, and our youngest is a 3-month-old beautiful baby girl. So,
got you. So sleep is out the window, and you're just getting rid of it.
It's actually not too bad though. We have what people affectionately refer to as sturdy babies. My son was 9 pounds when he was born. My daughter was 10, and big babies sleep, so it's actually not so bad.
That's nice. I'd never heard that before, but I guess
sturdy.
Big people sleep a lot too. It's sturdy and big people sleep a lot too. So it's I guess that comes to the territory.
Yeah.
You're a big reader. So what's your advice to raising them to be big readers? I'm asking you this as a personal note because I have 10 and 8-year-old boys, and I'm trying to instill the love of books in them because I was never introduced to it much as a kid. I wasn't a big reader. I'm a big Audible guy, but I want something different for them. So
yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it probably just depends on life stages. I mean, at this point, it's basically brainwashing. You read with them a lot, and they just learn to like books. My 2-year-old loves books, but ever since he was born, I'd read to him pretty much every day. So I think a lot of it's just imprinting, but as they get older, I know when I was a kid, my mom was on a mission to brainwash the love of books into me as well. And she would use them as a reward. So she would figure out what kind of things that I liked. And instead of, hey, we'll go get a meal that you like or buy you an ice cream cone or whatever, she would buy us books when we did something well. You get to pick a book, And so that was big for us because we got to look forward to reading was like a treat. You know what I mean?
Right. So you've written a lot of books. You've written 14 books.
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm. I do.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's what I do. I ghostwrite. That accounts for maybe a third of those. I write a little bit of nonfiction here and there, but I love writing. I love writing fiction, specifically fantasy novels, like the most recent release through Enclave, From the Sun Sings. That's my favorite.
Okay. How's ghostwriting? To me, it sounds like I could write things I normally wouldn't write as myself, but I'm sure that's not the case, or is it?
It is a roller coaster. It just depends on your client. Sometimes it is so easy and fun and great and a breeze. And with some clients, it's just endless revisions and endless changing their minds. For some of your listeners who might not be familiar, I know a lot of times when I talk about it, not everyone really knows what ghostwriting is. A lot of people who have their name on the front cover of a book did not write it, especially, political figures or athletes, things like that. They have an actual writer writing for them. So I get hired to write books for people sometimes. But it just depends on the book, depends on the client.
Do you have to keep all that a secret, who you've written the books for?
It depends on the contract. Most of the time, in my experience, no. But then again, I've never written a book for an ex-president or something. So it depends how much clout you have. It depends how much clout your client has. If you ever see with and then an author's name on the front of a book after the main author, the second guy is the one who wrote the book. So I've gotten the with designation a couple of times, and a couple of times my name hasn't been in it at all. It just depends.
Gotcha. Guess you're not doing those for the glory. It's
yeah.
It's
Purely in it for the money. Yeah. No, just kidding. It's it always teaches you a lot, working with different people. And one of the reasons I love being a writer is you get to dive into a research topic and just get obsessed with something for a while, and I love that. And ghostwriting, when I do it, lets me get involved in an area of the world that I wouldn't normally look into. And I like that about it.
Is there one that sticks out for you in particular that you really enjoyed researching and getting into?
Man, yeah, we're in the process of putting out a book right now by a gentleman named Marcel Becker, who was a very, very prominent outlaw biker in his youth. He was prosecuted under the Kingpin statutes, 5-time felon, had an entire multi-agency team dedicated to bringing him down, just to give you some perspective. And this guy is the most incredible story of turning his life around. And so, that book's still a little while from hitting the market, but they're going to call it free at last. It's pretty neat. I'm excited about that one.
That sounds very interesting. What was the researching process like, especially for something like that?
Yeah, first and foremost, it was a lot of interviews with him. A lot of running the tape and sitting down and saying, tell me about your life. Tell me about this aspect. I want to know about your family. Tell me about prison. Tell me about, this and that. Over the course of months, I got to know him really, really well, which was neat because he's a great guy. But other than that, it looked like going down rabbit trails to understand the picture fully. So listening to podcast series on how the FBI came into being, doing a lot of research on how the prison system works, how outlaw motorcycle gangs work. We're not allowed to say the particular gangs he was a part of for some very good reasons. But it was a lot of tangential sort of rabbit trail things that help you understand the world so you can write about it fluently.
Got you. The visual aspects of the world, I'd imagine, come into play heavily. I'm assuming you have to study that, and then when you're writing it, just to give the description, because anything that happens at a different time is hard to imagine
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a lot of our talks. Once we had the main story down, I would tell them, I need you to put me there. I need you to tell me what it looks like, what you remember, what it smelled like. We've got to make the reader feel like they're there with you. So definitely, it's a big part of it.
How do you stay organized through that? I find myself, I'm on Evernote one day, I'm on my iPhone notes
Yeah.
another, I'm using my voice memos. Yeah, I think pointers there.
I am at least as disorganized as you in one sense then. I think we all are. I'm always fond of saying creativity is messy, even if good books aren't. And so I've given up trying to be organized all the time, but for me, it's a big funnel system, right? So at every stage of the process, I care more about being organized. So at the beginning, when it's brainstorming, I'm the same way as you. I've got voice memos on my phone. I've got, little notes scratched, onto sticky notes on my desk and in notebooks and all over the place. But then as we start doing interviews and I have an outline, it begins to look more like something a human being could possibly decipher. And by the time we get to the book, all that stuff just kind of narrows down. So I don't know if it's a good system, but it seems to work for me.
Okay, it's been working for me to an extent. It's the
Yeah.
like there's so much wasted time in reorganizing it every once in a while that I could.
We're members of the same tribe. That's what I'm getting from this.
Okay. What's your favorite type of writing? Fiction, fantasy?
Yeah, I love writing fiction. Specifically, I love fantasy. Absolutely my favorite. The first books I ever wrote were a trilogy of fantasy novels. We're actually doing a re-release fairly soon on those called the Starfall trilogy. And we've got, there's an urban fantasy book that I wrote called The Weathermen that'll be coming out in about a year. And I'm also working on a new fantasy trilogy. So that's not the only kind of novel that I write, but it's absolutely my favorite. I like the idea of sort of making up the rules and really starting from scratch and asking yourself, how does this world work? I love that.
You say we. Who's we? You have partners in these novels that you're writing, or?
No, I'm just inarticulate and use the royal we far too often. No, my wife helps me out a lot with a lot of the marketing and design process. And of course, we've got some great people over at the publisher helping out. So as far as the actual writing process is concerned, it's pretty much me. But after that, the number of people involved keeps growing.
Gotcha. How has having kids affected your ability to find that creative spark or the time or the energy? He sleeps, so that's a big plus.
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't tire you out, but
I think the biggest change is working at home is a literal impossibility. In the old days before children, hey, maybe I don't have to leave the house today. I can get my stuff done here. That is just not the case ever anymore. But, on the positive side, I think you get a lot of inspiration as I'm sure you're aware out of being a father, and it gives you a different perspective on the world. And that certainly helps the work, I think, kind of knowing who you're doing it for in a sense and having a different perspective on the world.
Money becomes more important. I know that was one thing that got me once I had kids was just the financial responsibility for raising them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think sometimes people think that can sound jaded in one sense because nobody likes to talk about money, but the opposite is sort of true because as an artist, it's so easy to be insular and frankly, kind of narcissistic, right? We talk about writing for yourself. Well, why would you write for yourself, right? I mean, the very form of the media implies that you kind of hope someone else will read this thing. So the nice thing about feeling the pressure of having to market something is, this thing that you've labored over and you hope is significant and might touch people, you actually have a fire under you to push it out into the world, and I think it's part of the natural process that's actually a healthy and a good thing,
Yeah, no, that's very true. I guess I want to move along to your wrestling because that is your second scene and really why we have you here today.
Absolutely.
When did you start wrestling? Was this something you had done as in your early childhood?
When I was a little kid, I loved to wrestle all my friends. It was my favorite thing, always bugging people to do it. And I actually always wanted to go and join a wrestling team when I was a kid, but the other kids made fun of me. And unfortunately, I dropped it until high school. So I was a late bloomer. I didn't start wrestling until high school. That was the first time for me.
Okay, it's a lesson learned there. Kids are making fun of you and you stop doing it because I guess
I
too
know.
embarrassed and didn't realize it was something you'd naturally have.
What's wrong with me, you know? But thankfully hit the ground running once I did start. And, you know, ever since then, you know, since about 14 years old or so, it's been a part of my life. Once you get out of high school and college, you know, there really isn't a whole lot of competitive wrestling available unless you're making a serious run at the Olympics or something. You know, it's not like going down to the tennis club, right? However, there are a lot of really great coaching opportunities, and that's something that, you know, ever since I stopped competing, I started coaching, and I've been doing that for a long time now, and it's been really neat.
What's your favorite age group to coach?
Oh man, I know this is a cop-out, but I love them for different reasons. I think it's really fun to coach high schoolers because they're so driven, and you can teach them kind of some more advanced technique, right? And really help them come into their style. Because with younger kids, you aren't shaping a particular wrestler. You're forming the basic material, right? You're teaching them what a wrestler is. You're teaching them what wrestling is. But by the time you get somebody who's in their teens, you're helping them become an individual insofar as their style and their wrestling game is concerned. And that's pretty fun. But, you know, it's a lot of fun coaching grade school kids. I've done some of that as well because, you know, it's like anything with kids. It sort of reignites. It reminds you of the joy of the basic discovery of the thing. It reminds you why you love to wrestle. And, you know, you get to join in all those little triumphs of, you know, them learning how to do things for the first time. And that's a lot of fun.
The younger kids, that reminds me, my son who's 10 has a new soccer coach, and he had a whole speech to parents last week saying, I'm going to play them at all the different positions. Like, this is the age that they need to try it all. They're not going to be individually good at any one position, or they're not going to individually focused on any one position. They can be better at one, of course, but it's very similar.
Yeah, that's great. You know, not a lot of coaches will do that. So that's a good thing.
So right now you're an assistant coach at USC? Or was this
No,
before?
that was a few years ago. Gosh, I was doing that from like 2012 to 2015, maybe. Whereas the head assistant coach up there and, you know, driving around and flying around for tournaments. That was a lot of fun. Also at that same time, I was coaching for Beat the Streets LA, doing youth wrestling stuff. These days I'm down here in San Diego, and I coach at East County Wrestling, which is in the off season. It's, you know, mostly high schoolers. We do Greco and freestyle tournaments. And during the season, we mostly have junior hires and some youth wrestlers, and, you know, we're teaching them how to wrestle. So it's a year-round thing, but our crowd kind of changes.
I guess I should go back because I'm not even familiar with the different types of wrestling there is. So
Sure.
There's Roman, like I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there are innumerable types of wrestling. Basically, every culture has its own particular hallmark, which is pretty neat. However, in America, we have a particular tradition called folk style, also called collegiate wrestling. And that's what everybody comes up doing in high school and, you know, in the NCAAs and in college. And basically, the way we Americans like to wrestle is the point system rewards you for putting someone towards their back, and you get rewards for moving away from your back. Because you pin someone, you win, right? You hold someone on your back, you win. So that is not an internationally recognized style. That's really just here in the US and a little bit in Canada, but not so much. Most of the world, at least in international competition, international wrestling is made up of freestyle and Greco-Roman. And Greco-Roman, you're not allowed to touch your opponent's legs, which is a pretty big departure from other styles. It's all upper body. It's all throwing. So it's very, very much, you know, an upright sort of wrestling, very explosive. A lot of hand fighting and throws. And then you have freestyle, where you are allowed to attack your opponent's legs. And that really emphasizes the explosive power of the wrestler. The point system really rewards you for demonstrating a mastery of manipulating your opponent. So you get points for things like, you know, if you can make your opponent's feet go over their head, as you throw them. You get a lot of points. If you can make your opponent roll, right, you can force them to roll, then you get points, things like that. And then, of course, if you pin them, you still win. But there are just different rules and different rewards in those systems.
Okay. If I'm trying to follow, if you pin them, you win. How do the points come into play if you've already won by pinning them? Or do the points not matter at that point?
It's pretty hard to pin a good wrestler. So
Okay.
it's think about chess, right? If you checkmate your opponent, you win. However, if grandmasters play each other 5 times, how many checkmates are you going to get, right? Some, but not all of them, you know. And you can't end in a tie with a wrestling match. We don't have any stalemates. So you have a point system to show who dominated and who did the best in the match, and you can win by points. And most of the time, that's how a match is decided.
Okay, I got you. I know I had a couple of stories I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
Why is it harder to teach a second-year student than a first-year?
This is something we always laugh about. I think it applies to a lot of disciplines. In wrestling, we have this kind of tongue-in-cheek saying. We say, first-year wrestler, a novice. Second year, a coach. And the idea is, you know, second-year wrestlers are terrible to coach because, you know, they got beat up a little bit the year before. They learned a lot, and they just think that they are experts now. And they try to instruct and boss around, you know, the new crop of first years, and they still just have no idea what they're talking about. But that's one of the things I love about wrestling. It really humbles you. One of the cool things about, you know, coaching is you get to walk alongside kids and learning that very valuable life lesson of being teachable and humble. And second-year wrestlers are usually the ones who need it the most.
I feel like that's almost in every job. I feel like even employees I work with, they're the third week there, they're like, oh my God, I know all these shortcuts to get that stuff done. And,
oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's the worst because, you know, they're not even keeping it to themselves. They try to take the guy who's been there a year less than them under their arm and say, listen, I'm going to tell you how things are.
Yeah.
You know, meanwhile, your coach has been wrestling for 35 years. The other kids in the room have been wrestling since they're 4, you know. Gosh, I remember when I was in high school, we had this kid. I don't remember his last name. I probably shouldn't say it even if I remembered, but his first name was Dylan, I think. And he was one of those guys. He had a tiny bit of experience, was not very good, but he just knew that his way was right, regardless of how the matches turned out. And so he had this very hunchback stance, kind of looked like the hunchback of Notre Dame. He didn't have any sort of disability. He could stand upright. He just wouldn't. And he would hold his hands out like this, sort of like he's casting a spell on you, way too far out in front of his body. Looked like a caricature of himself. And, you know, us older guys would try to always say, hey, you know, there are better ways. But he just knew better, and he was going to teach all the little ones. So you run into that sometimes.
That's funny. I know people like that, and again, the other professions.
Yeah. See, but that's the great thing about wrestling is you get irritated with someone like that, and you throw them over your head. You know, can't do that in the office.
No, we should really implement that into like all aspects of life. Can I?
Yeah. Let's take out the hardwood floors, put in some mats. It'll be great.
Exactly. We're gonna work on this together.
Yeah, you and me.
So, as far as teaching kids in LA not to shout their own names in triumph, I mean, I like to shout my name after I do something.
Yeah. Man, I loved coaching for Beat the Streets Los Angeles up there. I coached for them for a number of years, actually right around the time they started the pilot programs up there. And I had a bunch of great kids. There was one kid in particular who had so much talent and just absorbed everything that I taught him like that. And, you know, he had to learn the humility lesson too. We were at a tournament one time, and it was kind of a difficult match, I guess. And he ended up reversing his opponent and pinning them, you know, before time ran out. And as he finished, you know, ref blows the whistle. He jumps up and bares his chest to the world and screams his own name, just his name. And I had to take him aside and say, hey, I love you, but that was really, really stupid. And, you know, you have a talk about being a good sport and humility and all that. But, you know, you're going to learn those lessons somewhere. And that's the nice thing about wrestling is you can learn there. You can learn them as a kid. don't shout your own name into the void. Let other people do that for you, maybe.
That's hilarious. But
oh gosh, it was so
you're allowed to
fun.
do those things as a kid. That's when you're supposed to learn and do those things.
It's like, well, you're in junior high. You should probably stop. But yeah, it's a good laboratory for learning and making mistakes for sure.
Yeah. My son takes Taekwondo.
Oh
So
yeah,
I know
great.
you'll relate to. Yeah, he's a black belt now. He's 10, and it was a lot more dangerous when he was back sparring with the white belts. I think his fourth time there. Teacher came over, said no kicking or punching to the face, and what do you think happened?
Yeah,
Son's tooth went across the room.
Oh man, losing teeth, huh?
Yeah. One of the white belts kicked him in the face. Yeah, but I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, in wrestling, with novices, and also, training Brazilian Jiu-jistu is a big part of my life. And it's the same thing. In that discipline, we always say the white belts are the only ones who hurt you. We call them baby snakes because they have no control. And, somebody more experienced is going with them, trying to teach them, and they're spasming, It's like, okay.
My 8-year-old's been asking for jiu-jitsu, and he's got like the tightest grip. He'll grab onto my leg or arm while we're wrestling. I can't peel him off. I guess jiu-jitsu is definitely more, it's closer to wrestling than something like Taekwondo, correct?
Yeah, it is in the sense that it's grappling, right? As opposed to like a striking art. The difference would be that jiu-jitsu is primarily a martial art as opposed to a sport, whereas wrestling is primarily a sport. But there is some bleed over, right? So knowing how to wrestle is going to help you in a fight. A lot of modern MMA, pretty much all modern MMA fighters, study some form of wrestling. And same with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's primarily martial art, but also there's tournaments, there's point systems. You can go and compete, But yeah, it's a really neat thing to do. It's a great art.
Okay. What age would be appropriate to start someone?
8 is certainly fine. My son is coming up at 3, and when he turns 3, we're going to see if he's ready. I'm already teaching him, they have Gracie games. I'm teaching them little principles of wrestling just when he wrestles around with me. You turn it into a game for kids. And a lot of it just really depends on how good the programs where you live are. Because obviously, with coaching of any kind, especially with kids, it depends on the age that you're coaching radically changes how you teach. So for little kids, they're not teaching them how to do arm bars. They're not going to be breaking bones. They're teaching them about position. And most of training has been turned into games to sort of shape their reflexes and their responses to things. But yeah, 8 is a great age to do it. I would say if you guys are so inclined. Some people start as early as 3. That's on the extreme end. But training looks different. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully we get past COVID so I can get him into a gym because he's definitely asking for it. So one last thing I'd like to talk about is your book. So you have a book that's coming out when is it coming out? I know you can pre-order it now.
Yeah. So if we're talking about For Whom the Sun Sings, it actually came out a couple of months ago. The press kit's a little out of date, I think. So apologies for that. But
that's your website.
Yeah. Well, I'm bad at the internet, I guess. But it came out in March, and that's been really neat. It was #1 new release on Amazon for about a month, and people really seem to enjoy it and share it. The premise is the entire world is blind. No one has even ever heard of sight. No one has a concept for it. No vocabulary. It's not a thing. And there's a boy named Andreas who is born inexplicably with the ability to see. And so the book follows him from the time he's about 11 to the time he's about 13. And it's that moment where you are kind of coming to be able to think abstractly about the world and see yourself. And it's his story of growing up and radically upending the very strict and severe society that he lives in. So it's a neat read. People seem to be connecting with it. I'm pretty excited about it.
Right. How long was this work in progress for you?
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I started writing it in 2015, I think. And I was so excited about the idea. I loved the concept. I told myself, Wes, you're going to write a rough draft in a month. 30 days, you're going to have a rough draft of this novel, for sure. Took me a year. Took me an entire year to write the rough draft. And from there, it was a lot of revising and editing and all that. But I actually set it on the shelf for a few years. I didn't send it out to any agencies at all until about 2 years ago. And first agent that we sent it to loved it. And it got picked up right away. So technically, it's about 5 years in the making, which is a little crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many times you rewrote things, because even when I do an email, if I put the email on the side and I come back to it, I'll rewrite that one paragraph email 20 times.
Well, writing is such a clash of opposites. I mean, there's so many paradoxes involved in being a proficient writer. And so for me, I actually write all my novels longhand, just pen and paper, so that while I'm in that creative process, I can't really revise. I compartmentalize and I say revising is for later. So I get my draft down, and then once we get into editing, I'm all editing. So that's how I cope with that, which is a little extreme and a little crazy because it takes some time, but works for me.
That's great. We all have to find our ways.
Oh yeah.
Mine's using 20 different electronic notebooks, different places, and then trying to remember where I wrote everything.
Yep, I relate. I like to think that the search teaches us something, maybe. Searching for information.
I'll come across other things that I wrote that I completely forgot that I wrote down. So that is something.
It's like finding
that
20
was
bucks.
A great idea. Exactly.
Yeah.
This has been Second Scene with Michael. I want to thank you for sharing your stories, Wesley. Check out W.A. Fulkerson at WAFULKERSON.com. And you can actually order the book there, even though it says pre-order. It'll take you to the Amazon and you can order it. It's called For Who the Sun Sings Now, correct? For Whom the Sun Sings
For Whom
Now.
the Sun Sings, yeah.
For Whom the Sun Sings Now. And if you want more no-nonsense advice or free one-on-one mentorship in an area from resume writing to mental health, send us a contact request at dweebsglobal.org and we will pair you with a mentor. Tune in next Tuesday for another episode of Second Scene with me and Scene.